So for today, this is just our agenda. Good to see everybody again. Just kind of a little bit of a debrief on the review process. And then hopefully, Susan will be joining us to lead us through just kind of a reminder of the anatomy of a cubes lesson, because it might have been a little bit since we last looked at them, and then to walk us through the cubes publication sort of menu-driven process. Then we'll kind of talk about when we'd like to try to get things up to cubes. And then sort of the last little bit is kind of sharing your wonderful creations with the rest of the network. And so the showcase for that is at the winter gathering, as which you guys participated in on the other end of the cycle last year. So just a little bit, thank you. I sent out a brief survey. It's very brief, just to kind of give us a little bit of feedback on the review process to kind of see how it's going. There will be, of course, sort of broader assessment of your experience. Emily Ward will be kind of following behind that, but sometimes that's kind of, details can get lost in sort of the bigger picture. And so we just wanted to check in with you with respect to how your experience was with the review. So at this point, and I had 6 responses. I guess I should hopefully have at least 8 responses if there was like 1 response per lesson. So there might be still a few of you that would be able to contribute to this and kind of help complete our information. So please, if you have the opportunity to do that, that would be great. Looks like at the moment, folks have gotten between 1 and 3 reviews across the group, and a mix of peer reviews and reviews from the leadership team. And I'm just going to kind of give some broad highlights of this overview, and because we still don't have all the information. It looks like for those of you who got some reviews, everybody got at least 1, but the reviews were helpful. It seemed like there was a lot of, people thought that the reviews that they got were useful based on the sample so far. I'm trying to toggle ahead here. Come on, next slide. And that's in terms of like, given the reviews and given what they have, they're in a position where, 1 being they don't feel at all prepared to kind of move forward with revisions, and 6 being like we've already done the revision, so we're done. And it sort of looks like in general everybody's kind of on the positive end of the spectrum, that they're feeling like they're at least moderately prepared for kind of finalizing their lessons. And so good, but lots of folks in the 4 here still. And so there still may be some opportunity to kind of check in with your team and or your mentors to kind of make sure that you're feeling in good shape as you head into the sort of final revisions of your lessons. So let's just kind of open it up for a minute. How are people doing? Do people feel like they're any questions about the revision process? Any requests particularly that related to kind of moving into this next stage? Any conversation around revisions?
James, I had a question. I'm not sure if this is the best time for that. I emailed you about it earlier this week, and I understand if you didn't have time to respond yet. It's the sort of supplemental materials like worksheets and handouts that you're doing with your lessons. Mm-hmm. Should those be in PDF form or Word form, or they should be built into sort of the lesson plan that we've been writing about?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's no specific rule for that. In the past, I've tried to make a Word version as part of it, because in principle, one of the sort of ideas behind cubes is that people can modify your work with acknowledgement. And we can hear more about that when we hear about the licensing and so forth, which it looks like Susan can walk us through. But if you have a Word document, sometimes it's easier for people to take what you've given them and kind of modify it for their own uses. On the other hand, sometimes you might want to have a PDF just for, like archival purposes. So I would say if you have like worksheets, I would generally kind of pull things apart. So in terms of like, if you have a worksheet, I wouldn't kind of embed that too deep in a lesson where like the instructor would have to cut that out and kind of make their own PDF of it. I would make that as a standalone file. And then I guess I'd say, you could have that. You can upload as much as you want. So you could upload that data sheet as a PDF and a Word document. And they're both there. If somebody just wants to go in and use the PDF, then they're in a position where they can do so. If someone wants to modify it, then they've got a Word document that might be easier for that. If you have sort of like instructions, like a version that has guidance for the instructor, some of that language is embedded there. Sometimes it's good to kind of have like, well, this is the instructor's version, and then this is maybe like, these are just the handouts that the students need to see. I've pulled out the language that we wouldn't want the students to see because it's only for an instructor. So like if there are materials that you would envision being handed out to the students without having the instructor's instructions on there, then put a version in when you upload that is that kind of standalone student version. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of this is a great question to kind of segue into kind of the mechanics of like, what are the components of the cube lesson again? And then kind of like, how do we upload that? So I think I saw, she was here just a moment ago.
Yeah, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties. I couldn't
there,
hear.
There you are. Good, welcome.
The meeting. I'm here.
Yes. James is getting nervous.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to walk through it all.
Wonderful. Okay, well, with that, then let's transition over into sort of like, okay, you ready? You're making your revisions, and then what happens after you've got your final version ready to go? And Susan's going to kind of walk us through Cubes lessons, components, and how to publish them. Thanks, Susan.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, I gotta hide all these bars now. I can't see anything. So when you publish your Cubes lesson, this is the page that you're gonna see. So you won't be able to like read through the whole document or anything. Your audience is only going to have this summary, the keywords, and a brief description and the citation. You can go to file contents and see all of the different files that I've uploaded for my hopefully lesson users to implement, like the lesson plan. So that's the document with the whole, all of the sections that you've been writing with your group mates, a worksheet, a data CSV example data, an example of what the worksheet could look like if you change it, stuff like that. So it's not all right there for you to see. So thinking about how to present that for your audience is going to be really important. What are you going to include in the summary? What are you going to include in the description so that it's really clear to people who are looking for lesson content exactly what you're going to find. So when you log into Cubes, you can find the River Field Studies Network page, and I think everybody's a member now. I looked through the members earlier. It looks like there's a lot of folks in there. Awesome. So this is where you're going to start when you publish your lesson. You're going to come into projects, and then there's a project for your cohort, 2023 cohort lessons. And you should be able to come down here and start a publication. I'll just use this untitled one that I thought I deleted earlier, but it's still hanging around for us to play with. Oh. That's weird. Okay, continue draft. So this is the first page you're going to see. You're going to want a title and then the abstract. So this is the summary that's going to be really important for your audience, and the description. Maybe that's the different components that you've included, the target audience, versus the abstract is maybe more what the lesson covers. So you can try to differentiate those types of information into these two boxes. And only one of you will be the uploader if you have a multi-author lesson, but they should be able to find you in the list since you're all members. So just scroll through the list, find another person from your lesson, and you can just add them in there. Oh, this one is Lauren's. Now I know why it's in there. Then for extras, the image gallery is going to be important for you to have an image as the header or like the thumbnail for your lesson. There's so many great photos that you all took from the rendezvous and the student lessons and whatnot. So look through those files, whether it's the photos that James sent out or ones from you and your friends. Definitely put photos in here so that people can kind of see what it's about. And supporting documents. So other than your regular file, your other supporting documents can go in there. I like that they call it, let's jazz up the resource page, make it beautiful with photos. Then you're going to have to pick a copyright license. There's a lot of them here. But it'll show you kind of exactly what it means to have this. So if you choose Creative Commons, anyone can use that content completely as possible, public domain. It looks like it's suggesting that everybody use the attribution share alike. And that's because you can adapt, remix, transform, and build upon it, and then publish it again on Cubes. So if you ever come in and update it, or you're using someone else's lesson and you're like, hey, I think people should know that we had to do this instead, and that like this was a really great way for students to get the hang of this concept or whatever, then you can adapt and attribute that this is an adaptation of so-and-so's lesson called X, Y, or Z. So you can read through those, pick whichever one makes you feel comfortable. But it looks like the most common one that it recommends is non-commercial 4.0 international. Then you're going to add tags. So for all of us, this is probably going to be teaching material. Maybe if you built it off of a data set, you'd pick data set instead. Mostly undergraduate level. I would say more than an hour instead of an extended project for most people's, because it should fit in a lab period. But if you have one that builds in a second lab period a week later or whatever, you might pick extended project. The types of technologies that might be important for completing this lesson. Inclusive pedagogy. So is this helping students develop empathy, classroom climate, promoting engagement? Cubes has some universal design ontology you can choose from if you think that, you know, I specifically thought about making my lesson accessible using a boat ramp or whatever. Maybe I'll click that button for how people should complete this coursework. And then another optional set of open access, etc. Keywords. This is where you can type in all those things that if it's not in your title and you want people to find it, put those keywords in. One of them should be Riverfield Studies Network. So that way everyone's lesson kind of gets tagged into the same category again. We're promoting that this is an effort for inclusive field education. So please use Riverfield Studies Network as one of your keywords. And the last component is notes. So this is version change notes. Usually if like you're updating something, or like, because you can come back in and edit this later, you might use this in that context. Since there's not previous versions, you probably won't have anything that you put in here to keep track of how you've changed it over time. But something to keep track of for the future. So the beginning, this is where your primary file goes. If you have external links that you want people to look at, like some people had YouTube videos that would be really helpful, or other websites to provide background information, other cubes lessons. Like if you have one that you were like, oh, this would be a great precursor to my lesson from like the previous cohort, you could, oops, it doesn't like when you enter. You can search those. So exploring detritus-based food webs and streams was the one that I made last year. You can tag your collaborators' lessons if they've already published their lesson and it ties into the one that you've made, or databases if you have something to do with that. But so your primary file goes here, and then in extras is where you're going to add images and supporting documents, just to help you compartmentalize that you're going to have like 6 different PDFs or whatever that you're uploading with your worksheet or your PowerPoint for background or anything else that you're providing. You don't want that in your primary document. You can put that in supporting documents.
And just to kind of piggyback off of the different versions, and one of the things I know that some of you have intentionally designed your lessons to be complementary to each other. And that's something that you might want to highlight. One of the things that I think, I don't know of a better way to do this. I think the problem, like so that would mean like it might be nice for you guys to be linking those lessons very specifically when you publish in Cubes. The problem is that Cubes won't let you do that with an unpublished lesson. So is what you might have to do is all publish your lessons, but you won't be linked yet. But you might say like, okay, well, now that everybody's got them up, I want to go in and I want to link to, between like, DD and Ross's or whatever, right? For example, what you'd have to do in order to do that is you'd actually have to make a revision. So you'd have to go back in, kind of make a new version of your lesson. And then the only thing you might change is you would go into that URL, add links, and like, Dee would link to Ross and Ross would link to Dee and their 2 lessons. And then you'd basically create a V2, a version 2. So it's one of these things that like that for me, when I think of like making a new version, it's kind of seems intimidating, like a big deal. Like I made major revisions to it. But the way that Cubes works, like once it's published, even if you wanted to like change oh, you caught a spelling mistake and you want to correct it, you got to make a new version. So don't be intimidated by creating a new version. You might make some mistakes as you're uploading something. If you publish it and you're like, oh, I meant to add this thing, just go make a new version, and then and upload it as a V2. And if you're interested in linking between your lessons, you might have to do that anyway.
So even when
an easier way to do it.
Yeah, even when you search, you'll see a lot of them have the same titles, and it's because people are making new versions of other people's, and when you click on it, it'll say this is an adaptation of so and so's original lesson. So we have all these ones about translocation of nutrients. So the same thing would happen if you kind of built off each other's, essentially. Okay. Questions about publishing to Cubes? Even if it's something specific to your group and you're like, what do I do with this document? Or how do I incorporate this recommendation or whatever?
I had a question about the video recordings that we did with the NAU students as background material. are you all posting those videos or just your slides as part of your cubes lesson?
You're asking the other participants.
Or whatever you all have as experts on this, what you recommend us doing there.
Let me chime in on that. I think when we had the assignment for you all to pre-record your lesson, it was with the expectation that you would have those available to publish along with the rest of your cubes lesson if you wanted to. And with the feedback from the students, you could re-record those lessons if you wanted to improve them in some way. So feel free to do that.
I think the other thing, Ross, and if I responded to that email in my head, and this is what I said, was like, for example, your comment was like, there's some content in yours that you thought was very specific, contextual to the NAU presentation. And you're like, well, that might seem a little odd in this context. So you were thinking of maybe just going with slides, for example. I guess what I might say is put your slides up, and maybe you could revise your presentation. But if you didn't want to do that, then maybe you could provide, you could upload a link to the video, but provide some explanation. Here is, as long as like you feel like 90% of it's good, it's just there's a few odd things that are sort of very NAU specific. Then you could say, here are the authors presenting some background material for this lesson to a group of students at NAU as part of the training process, blah, blah, blah. And so then it provides, it won't seem kind of like very dissonant. Like, why is he talking about NAU? What does that have to do with it? Because you can kind of put that in the metadata, as it were. So if you have your slides there, then that would give the user the opportunity to just kind of like, listen, I don't want to mess with the video. I'm just going to go with the slides. But on the other hand, they could watch your video. And even if they didn't want to use your video, they could be like, oh, this is what they said. And when I use their slides, I'm going to paraphrase what I heard from watching them. Or they could just kind of like present your video, with that sort of additional information. So I feel like I'll confess I haven't gone through and reviewed all of those videos, but I remember at the time thinking that they were quite valuable. And for one, there's a little bit of your personality in there as well. So I think it kind of provides an additional human dimension. Who is this author? We see you're speaking, and so I like that aspect of it. It gives a little bit more connection to the person behind the lesson. And then I think kind of hearing you talk about it in your own words can maybe help someone either prepare to use your slides and or just present. So I think they're valuable, and unless you're just super, super embarrassed by them, I'd encourage you to think about adding them to your lessons, because I thought you guys did, generally speaking, a pretty good job with all of them.
Awesome. Thanks.
A question building off of that. Should we download the videos and upload the video files because the links might expire?
Does YouTube expire? I don't know. I guess it can.
Are they on YouTube? I guess I thought they were just on the Zoom share.
Well, that's a good question. That's a great question, actually, because so last year didn't have any videos. So this is kind of a new exploration. I guess, where are the videos archived? Are they just in our folder, or are they on YouTube? I've forgotten.
I think each person recorded on Zoom.
Okay. On
their own Zoom platform, sent it to the students, and then we have them in the folders.
Okay.
But the people, like each individual, I think you can download that video in just like an MP4 format and save it outside of Zoom.
Okay, well that's great. I'm glad this has come up, because it sounds like there might be a little bit that we need to help y'all with here. So
I recommend that we do that. My institution deleted all of our Zoom files from the COVID era, which is a real bummer.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would. We have actually kind of like a playlist for the network on YouTube, and so maybe what can happen is the leadership team can go in, like if you're planning to use your lessons, we can go in and basically put them on YouTube as unlisted, so that nobody can find them, but give you guys the links. And then we can send them to you, and you can choose whether you want to sort of like, because just pasting in the URL is the easiest way to add your link to the lesson. So that way they're all kind of in one place, in terms of the network, and then, but also that can give you, rather than all of you having to upload them, and then they would only be on Cubes, I guess. So anybody else got more experience in this, have, other ideas that we could think about, or that would be my first thought.
I don't have more experience with this at all, but I have a question that I imagine might pertain to a lot of us, which is if our lesson has gone through some significant shifts from the time when we were recording those first, the first recordings for the NAU class, I guess I'm just worried that there are some things in that recording that are no longer super relevant or just applicable to the lesson that's going to be published on Cubes. Sort of how much should we worry about that, if at all?
I would recommend that you re-record it then, especially if it doesn't align with the lesson that you're publishing. Take the feedback from the students, take your own adjustments. And if you want to record it and then send it to me or to someone else, we could review it and give you feedback on the new recording if you like. Of course, everything can always be improved. So, is it sufficiently good enough to go with the lesson that you now have to publish is the question.
And
okay,
I guess
thanks.
And elaborating on that, I mean, like, as you review it, like, is it something that, providing some contextual information could address? Like, for example, you might say, the lesson presented here focuses on, minutes 5 through 7 of the following video. Or there might be ways to provide some additional context to kind of help, kind of think about what's the best use of your time there. Other questions along those lines or other lines?
This may be going back a little. My computer kept like dying and then kicking me off the meeting. So I think I got everything down about like what to do with the lesson, but the very first step to just create the new lesson is, do we go to publications and then start a new resource? Is that
Yes.
where it is? Okay, thanks. I just missed that part, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't like clicking the wrong thing. Thank you.
James, can you resend a link to your photographs on Flickr?
Absolutely. I can send those. There are also some videos of some of you that you could take advantage of. And also I'll share the slide. I'll put that link in the slide deck. That's the sort of minimal slide deck that we have for today. But also the link also contains Susan's sort of cheat sheet for Cubes that we've shared already once, just in case you've kind of lost track of that. And then also the video that I also have shared that was made by the Cubes mothership. That's actually, I think, pretty accurate, pretty much reflects a lot of what Susan said, and has also kind of a good kind of fallback in case you don't remember. And we'll also share the recording for today, so you'll have those various ways to kind of double check. Okay. If there's not too much else, then let's just kind of transition. Let's see here. So everybody joined. You guys are heroes. We walked through the lessons. You know what they're supposed to be. Again, I think, just to reiterate what Susan was saying, is that like all of this, I feel that the sort of landing page for Cubes kind of sometimes sells short all of the hard work that are in the documentation that gets uploaded as just files. So, because this is what you'll see. So picking a good picture and, providing a good description are kind of, the best you can do to kind of like get the person who lands on your lesson page that looks like this to kind of take the next important step to dive into those, those great materials that you've prepared by like opening an actual file. So paying some attention to the materials and the descriptions you put here on the landing page. This is the video that I've shared. And if you hit the hot link, the quick link guide to publishing, that's the cheat sheet that Susan shared around. Oh, welcome. I didn't want to share that. Okay. We're kind of trying to look ahead to having these lessons published for the winter gathering. And so with that in mind, our target date is to have sort of everybody's lessons published by the 15th of January. So, a little more than a month from now. But so what that would mean is, you're able to incorporate the feedback that you've received and then do the step that we just walked through of publishing it to Cubes. And so some thoughts about whether that seems like a tractable timeline for folks. So they think that we can do that in a month and a week from now. Part of the give me some thumbs up. Andy's giving me a thumbs up. Who else thinks that's sort of doable? Of course, I can't actually see everybody. Everybody's like, where's my thumbs up? Or where's my thumbs down? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Thumbs up.
All right,
Thumbs
thank
up.
you. All right. And that also gives us, because sometimes things pop up, we might find like, oh, we're struggling with the videos or some of those kinds of things. Right now I'm trying to move everybody's picture from the middle of my screen. And so that gives us, a week or, a little bit of time to kind of troubleshoot anything that needs to be troubleshot, so that by the time we get to the winter gathering, everybody's lessons are there to be appreciated. So then that brings us to the winter, looking ahead to the winter gathering, and kind of discussing some of that. The date we would like to propose and is the 26th of January. So a Friday, that's a Friday afternoon. And that's, kind of parallels the time that we did it last year at the end of January. We're ideally looking for a 2-hour block, sort of 4 to 6 p.m. As a sort of as a proposal there. So what we'd really like folks to do is to try to look ahead and see whether this is something that they can be available for. What we would hope is that everyone can be there in person, because not only is this an opportunity for you to share your lessons, this is kind of like it's kind of like graduation ceremony as well. And so it's time to celebrate your accomplishments and the work that you've done. But if you have some big conflicts that can't be resolved, shoot me an email. There are possibilities for, since a lot of you have worked in teams, having somebody else in the team present your stuff if needs be. But obviously that's not ideal. So take a look at this date and this time, and see what you think. Actually, let me just go off screen share here for a minute, so I can see folks. So taking a look ahead, again, just kind of like, if you know that you're good for, like, you think that can work, give me a thumbs up for the 26th in that time. If you know that it can't work, you're like, no way I can make that, give me a thumbs down. And if you're not sure, then you can just not vote. But I'm just trying to get a sense of whether there's like an overwhelming, like, no way, this is not going to work. So I see a moderate number of thumbs up, but I also do see, okay, they're coming in. Andre, Matt, do you guys have any sense of whether those dates? Chad is a thumbs down, I see. So Chad's got a conflict. Andre can make it. Okay, Flora's got a conflict. All right. Dee Dee thinks she can make it. All right, so I'll follow up with this. I mean, part of it is also we're trying to also coordinate with the speaker as well, which is also not 100% pinned down yet in terms of their availability. But also one of the things that we're timing it this year is we won't, unlike last year where you had already been applied and been selected, what we're planning to do this year is to use the winter gathering as also an opportunity to communicate information to potential applicants, and the applications will be due very quickly after the presentation. So we'll be advertising very soon, trying to get the word out, and trying to steer people towards, hey, if you're thinking about this, join us at the winter gathering. Information will be shared at the winter gathering, and then sort of like have a few, a week to sort of wrap it up and get your proposals in. But so part of the reason we don't want to go too much later than the 26th is because we're anticipating that we'll have a lot of applications to work through, and so we don't want to go too much longer than that. But so that's sort of that last week is why we're kind of picking on that time frame. Is there? Okay, so okay, then let me go back to sharing. So we're envisioning the gathering this year similar to last year, which you all saw, but a little bit different. We're seeing it as kind of a part one and a part two, although we're not kind of advertising it that way because we would really like everybody to be able to, especially the sort of the larger network and sort of interested folks to kind of be there for the whole thing. But part one would be kind of a looking back on 2023. So quick overview of the year, but then really kind of highlighting your presentations and the new lessons, and then just kind of some reflection and some words about our time together. So that's kind of like the year, like looking back on 2023 and what that looks like. And then part two being looking ahead to 2024. This would include a keynote speaker. We're hoping to get someone who will be able to kind of provide a kind of a really cool introduction to the fact that the next rendezvous will be in the Klamath watershed with this historic dam removals, which are taking place as we speak. But then also give us an opportunity to give an overview of the next cycle. One of the things that we heard from feedback from you all was that some folks, the information that we shared leading into the application process last year, I think created, like, some folks had one idea and some folks had a little bit of a different idea. There was some variation in kind of what people thought they were signing up for. And I think that some of the folks who aren't with us now, that's part of the reason. And so responding to that feedback and trying to improve on that, we're thinking like, well, how can we try to make sure that we have an opportunity to really kind of communicate what the scholar cycle looks like, and so that people, the expectations are clear and they know whether they really want to follow through and sign up for that. So the application will look pretty similar to last year, which you all did, but then here we'll have an opportunity to hear from, for example, some words from the planning committee for the next rendezvous. One of your colleagues, Andy, is playing a really instrumental role in planning that, in addition to sort of the leadership team members from the West Coast area. But so we'll have a chance to kind of say, okay, looking ahead, this is what to expect for the next cycle. This is what the scholar overview looks like. So we'll have some time for that, kind of jumping off of hopefully an exciting keynote speaker. And then we'll probably kind of close for those who want to, so that wraps up the programming, but then we'll stick around for some Q&A. And that doesn't necessarily involve all of you, although having some of you participate in that would probably be really helpful in providing some insight for prospective applicants. But the idea being here that for those people who haven't applied yet, they're thinking about applying, they've come to the winter gathering to see you, to see your lessons, but also to hear a little bit about what this program is about. Then the leadership team and maybe some of the alumni can stick around and be like, Q&A. We can maybe do some breakout rooms, or a little bit of Q&A if people are interested, to just make sure that as people are finalizing their applications, they have as much access to the information they need to make good decisions about that application process as possible. So so that's kind of what we're thinking of, kind of part one, part two, each of those segments being just slightly less than an hour. And then for your presentations, kind of your contribution to the programming component on the front end of that, in the 2020, the sort of looking back on the 2023, would be we'll give you guys a template of just 4 slides, and we're going to try to kind of constrain it to a template just to make it, in some ways, make it easy for you guys, but also to just kind of keep everybody on a fairly short time scale. Obviously, there's a lot that could be said about every one of your lessons. And there's really, not enough time to go into any one of the lessons in depth. So just kind of recognizing that, kind of thinking about this as kind of a quick commercial. Like, if you could really kind of like only have 3 to 5 minutes to be like, this is why this lesson is really cool, like, what would you say? So 3 to 5 minutes with 4 slides, where you have just a title slide, which could be a title of the authors and maybe a pretty picture, a slide about your learning objectives, and then 1 to 2 slides about your approach. So maybe an approach and then a wrap-up slide, or maybe you need 2 slides on kind of the lesson approach or what have you. But really just trying to be really succinct and just kind of like give a quick overview of your lesson, in 4 slides. So we'll send a template out to you that you can kind of think to get that in, to create those 4 slides, and we'll put those into the larger slide deck for the winter gathering. And if we, because with 8 lessons in 5 minutes plus transition times or what have you, then that's still going to be 40 minutes or so, of 45 minutes of kind of hearing about your lessons. So hopefully that will kind of keep it quick and kind of moving along, kind of a lightning talk style. Any thoughts, questions, suggestions about the presentations about your lessons?
You said you'd be providing a template. Do you mean like you're going to literally provide us a template, or you just want us to follow that format that you listed?
I will probably send you a template that just kind of keeps consistent fonting and so forth. You'll have some discretion, artistic license and so forth within that, but I will send a template that has those 4 slides with like title, and then you like cut and paste your title where the title is in that font, something like that.
Can we have a competition for like best lesson? Because I kind of feel like mine was really the best, and
wow,
I want like a gold star, or
gosh,
black or something. Yeah.
Andy, I'll give you a gold star. How about that?
I'm rooting for Andre. Just kidding. Love you both.
Does that seem doable, reasonable? I know it's not a lot of time to communicate all the hard work that you've done, but it's what what I might, if they're nice and succinct, what I can also go in and do is I could maybe go in and splice these post hoc, and use them as little abstracts with your cubes. I could probably figure out some way to do that after you've done it. Anyway, I hadn't planned that. That was kind of spontaneous idea, but that could happen. Because if it's this little like mini video abstract, that could be really sweet. So keep that in mind. James might try to do that. I might try to do that. Taylor Swift era is in one of our lessons. Actually, we're thinking about doing the entire thing themed, like a Taylor Swift winter gathering, kind of a sequin motif on all the slides. And
Everybody needs a pink cowboy hat. There's probably a way to get your Zoom to put one on your head.
There probably is, actually. I know you can do sunglasses. So I'm not hearing, other than, we've got some great thematic ideas, Taylor Swift, which is currently the only idea running. So unless we hear something else, it'll just have to be Taylor Swift. But other people feel okay with that
I have
plan.
another question. Sorry. So
Yes.
do you prefer that just one, if we are in a team, do you prefer just one of us talk, or it doesn't matter?
There's it's only 3 to 5 minutes, and so I think that does. My first response to that was like, I would love to see everybody, which of course we all would, right? I mean, that's great, and I think that if you can make that happen so that you're all there and you can all speak, that would be wonderful. But I do recognize with 3 to 5 minutes, that might be challenging. There might be some challenges associated with that, so I think we'll leave that open to you. Certainly, everybody should feel like they can contribute to the presentation, but if you as a team kind of come up with like, actually, it's just better if sort of, one of us kind of leads the charge on it, then I think whatever makes the most sense for your team.
I think Carolyn and I are so in sync. We're gonna just each say every other word. So yeah.
That could be good. And if you can kind of pick us, like a soundtrack to go behind that a little bit. Taylor Swift, of course, and Andy's theme. Okay. So that sounds great. I think, let me just go back to screen share. I don't think too much else beyond that. So yeah, so after you give your presentations, then so in case there's Andy, that's the old haircut. This is last year's presentation. So if you're kind of like, what did it look like last year? You have that, and so forth. So that